Today I'd like to tell you a story about a Dharmic king. Now, this king was in ancient India a long time ago, and when he was holding court one day, this dove flew in, and he sat beside the king, and he told him, "This hawk is coming at me. He's trying to kill me. You have to protect me." And so the king protected the dove, and the hawk came in and said, "Okay, if you protect the dove, then how am I going to eat? How am I going to sustain my body?" And the king said, "Well, since I'm protecting this dove, I will just give you flesh from my own body." And so the king gave the hawk some flesh, and then eventually the hawk got hungry again, and not to mention his brothers and sisters were also hawks. They also got hungry again. And the king kept on giving flesh. He kept on sacrificing pieces of his body. And eventually, the king couldn't give any more and he died. So when the king died, he basically, he was relieved of his body and he went to heaven. He went to this, Swarg, this place where all your desires are fulfilled. And I like to think that that king would come back down because of that same compassion to help us as human beings. But as I look at our leaders nowadays, I'm starting to question whether any of them are dharmic, whether any of them really want to follow the rules of compassion. And the rules of compassion, they're not complicated. They're not obsessed with power, not obsessed with this particular nation or tribe. The rules of compassion are simple. Help those who need to be helped. Help those who need it the most. And since we have the leaders that we have, especially considering Trump in the United States, I start to wonder if there are any Dharmic kings right now. We call them different things. We call them prime minister, president, what have you. But then I try to find some leader by some title that's very similar to this king that would offer of himself just to protect one of his citizens. Because this story is very metaphorical. It's not meant to be taken literally. Doves don't actually talk. But the spirit of sacrifice is there. And how many of our leaders are willing to sacrifice in the same way that king did to protect that dove? And let's say, even after he died, we can even say after he committed political suicide, if he didn't actually die and it was all metaphor, who was left to perform the same role, and did they? And the people who we know would be kind of their livelihood would be sacrificed, or their wealth be sacrificed in order to benefit the grander whole. Did those people continue on? Could they live with slightly less wealth and everybody gain more wealth so that they can feed themselves properly, feed their children, have medical care? And usually the answer is no. The wealthy, even after or during a good king, especially after, will go back to the same state of self-preservation of wealth. Now, self-preservation of wealth is one thing. Preservation of life is another. Self-preservation of wealth is basically the constant ideology of the rich and wealthy, just trying to get more money. I might take care of my family, my political associates, I might pay my lobbyists, but that is the extent of my circle of compassion. The people themselves, the ones I'm taking the money from, well, they're not within my circle, is usually the attitude of the rich and wealthy, because how did they get that way? But like I said, in view of Trump and his regime that's in charge in the United States right now, it seems like he's the direct opposite of a Dharmic king. At any rate, I would ask all of you, how big do you draw your circle? how extensive is your compassion? And this is something that I ask myself quite often. How extensive is my own compassion? How do I extend that? How do I become less egotistical to include all of humanity within my realm of compassion and the animal kingdom and this earth and plants? What is the best way to do that? What can I preserve and sacrifice the least? Because a lot of the time when you're trying to preserve something, you're sacrificing something else. So what is the result of, the biggest realization of compassion? And what things can we let go? What taxations can we let go? I think that we can tax the wealthy much more and be more compassionate to more people, for instance. I think that we can make the logging industry less profitable, but allow for our forests to be repopulated by trees. These are examples. So when we examine ourselves and where our footing is, where our standing is on these issues, we just have to think of that Dharmic King who was willing to sacrifice as much flesh as it took to the hawk and to other hawks so that the doves could live. And the dove is a symbol of peace. So you can think about that further when understanding the metaphorical nature of the story. At any rate, I hope that you all enjoyed this video, and hitting that thumbs up down there really helps out the channel. My snake here is E.T. He's what made me think of this story is E.T. We have to give him mice, and in order to have him fed, so he doesn't die, we have to give him rodents, whether it be mice or rats. So I started to think, I'm sacrificing this one animal to save another. And how does that really apply to humanity? Because I think it does in a lot of ways. That's what made me start to ponder this old Hindu story. At any rate, thank you very much for watching, and hope to see all of you on the channel in the future.